Hello, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to Stop Searching, Start Finding, Using Your Brain for File Management. My name's Shelley Hayduck, and I'm co-hosting today's event with Matt Caton, our Director of Customer Solutions.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today.
All right. Well, before we get started on, where we're going and all the cool associative connections you can make with the brain to augment your file management, I think it's only fair to sort of give homage to our existing systems and for us to understand really some of these conventional paradigms that, in the 1800s or even in the early 90s when computers are coming out, how important they are, but how they also hold us back. And I think it's only appropriate that we mention Henry Brown, who in 1886 invented the filing cabinet, which then was known as a receptacle for storing paper. And the whole idea is you'd put one piece of paper in one folder, something else in another folder, and you could keep putting things inside of other things, but there was really no other way to organize in that sense because you're dealing with information in the physical world. Now, the interesting thing about that is we still follow that file folder hierarchical rigid categorization structure today. You can see I've got a couple file folder systems out on my desktop. So whether I am, on the cloud, even on Dropbox or Google Docs or even in Microsoft SharePoint, as advanced as some of these clouding technologies are, we're still using essentially an 18th century paradigm to organize. And what tends to happen is you have one piece of information that cannot be effectively categorized. So here I am. I've got clients, so I can go into my clients folders here, click on industries, and I can see which ones are in different industries. Like maybe I'll go into telecommunications. Oh, that folder is empty. Maybe I'll go back to my VIP clients. Here's Time Warner. Here's all my information. But they should also be in telecommunications. I can't make these kinds of connections because I'm essentially forced into a linear, single-dimensional structure of organization. And obviously, in some cases, that's good. Sometimes we do need to sort of draw a line and separate things. But when we're dealing with complex projects, pharmaceutical research, creative writing, our brains think in associations. So what we want to offer you today is a more advanced approach to organizing files in a networked-oriented display. But before I get started, I know that Matt Caton also has some interesting views and takes on the file folder paradigm. So Matt, I'll let you kind of chime in and give your 2 cents to the attendees before we take off into brain world here.
I do have an opinion, and Shelley, I feel like maybe I was misled. I thought today was all about how great filing cabinets are. And I have my filing cabinet right here.
Oh, it's nice. Nice
cabinet,
color.
It's wonderful. It's wonderful. One of the best inventions. Thank you, Henry Brown, for giving me a place to store my extra cords. I've got more extra cords. It's sort of like a digital graveyard in here. All of my gear and extra mice and components and things are in there. The only thing I don't have in my filing cabinets, obviously, are files. Like many of us today, I try and run a paperless office. And to be honest, and we're going to see this, I'm sure, many examples, there are things that simply don't fit in a filing cabinet. Digital files, digital pictures, videos, and just additional information about projects that we're working on that aren't in an actual file or can be printed out on a piece of paper. So the filing cabinet has simply been repurposed, and we're going to be looking at a mass quantity of different digital information sources that can all fit into the brain today.
Right, and that's a good point because it's about categorization and also aggregation because we know you're dealing with multiple sources. So on that note, I'm going to go ahead and close my files. Let me close those and open my digital brain just so we can compare and contrast here. So pieces of information in the brain are what we call thoughts, and a thought can represent any type of digital information. clicking on a thought in the brain triggers all related pieces of information. So I'm constantly presented with the most relevant information. Now, I'm specifically going to the client section because what I had in this brain was literally the same stuff that I had in that folder section, but it looked so barren and dry, just in the native, Windows folder system where you can see in the brain, we can do colors and you have these connections. So just visually, aside from the functionality and connections we're going to get into, just visually, there's a creative aspect that sort of, primes your brain and things start to come to life. But beyond that, one of the cool things about the brain is the way we organize information. Now, first of all, I don't want to give anyone the impression that we cannot organize by hierarchical information structures, nor that you should not, because of course, when you're starting to create a brain, you have to have some hierarchy, some basic categorization structure that separates things. And so that's why we have the parent, the active thought, and the child thoughts, the subcategories below. So, of course, anything below clients is a subcategory, and you could, if this was a folder system, these would be my, my subfolders in that directory path. And then to the right, where we get a little bit more interesting to give you more visibility, is we've got siblings. These are thoughts that share the same parent category, so I can see other stuff that's under this category. And then we have something that's also really cool that you don't have in a file folder system, which is what we call a jump thought. That's the lateral connection. So that's where Jack Gutman is our Senior VP of Services. He's not necessarily a client, so I'm not putting him below, but I certainly want him attached. I want to see what he's up to. So that's an example of more of an associative connection. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to click down into Client Services and click on Supply Chain Management. And what you can see now, of course, below these thoughts actually have content attached to them. So thoughts are pieces of information. They can be categories, but they can also have content. And you can have any number of documents or web pages. I can launch a web page here. Here's a link to Bank One, and I'll just go ahead and close that. And I can launch a Word document here and look at my Harley-Davidson in forecasting. So the idea is the brain is going to give you access to all these different information sources through these thoughts. But where we get interesting and different is the ability to have a set of documents, a piece of information, effectively organized and located in multiple categories. So for instance, I just clicked on my Time Warner Supply Chain Optimization. Now the cool thing about this is you can attach multiple versions of files to a thought. So you see here I have the little 4, and you can see in my Thought tab, I've got 4 versions of this document, which is great. So you can do versioning in the brain, and we'll cover that. So immediately I can see, so this, if I wasn't using the brain, would have to be a folder with 4 documents. Well, the problem with that is then I'd have to decide, do I want this folder stored in my supply chain management folder directory or under Time Warner or under Terry's projects? Well, you can't really do that. You can't make all these different connections. Whereas the brain, we are also organizing by connection, not just separation here. So I can effectively have 4 documents located in multiple places without duplication. So that's great from an efficiency perspective. It's also very important from an information discovery perspective, especially if you're sharing your brain or you have a brain on your company intranet, because people think about information differently. Maybe I'm just going to come into Time Warner thinking about the information as, most active. They're our most active client. That's how I'm going to get to it. I'm not necessarily going to think of it as a supply chain management service that we're doing for this company. Or maybe I'm just service focused, so I need to see that in this context. So whatever the context is, you can always make that additional connection. Maybe there's some legal work that we're doing with this supply chain project. So I can actually go ahead and also add a third category where this is stored under, again, without duplication. I've just now connected it under legal as well. And of course, if that doesn't make sense, we're not doing legal, I can unlink things as well. So it's very easy to change and modify these connections also. So now just to start on kind of the basics of file management, you can see that everything happens in the Thought tab. Let me go up to Time Warner, and it looks like we have I'm actually going to go ahead and maybe go over to Red Cross, do another client that doesn't have as many projects. I'm going to build a new website for Red Cross. So we have a new website project. So I'm just going to start typing in the name of my thought and add that. Now what I can do is I can attach and actually start creating a document from scratch in the Brain. All I have to do is right-click and add an attachment. And in this case, I'm going to add a Word document and start typing up the project requirements. And I'm going to go ahead and save that. And just so you know, each thought has its own unique thought identification number. So that I don't have to hit Save As, but I can if I want to do a new version. That's going to save, so I just hit Save, in the Brain's folder. Each thought has its own folder here, and I can actually open that so you can see what that looks like. So when I put something in my Brain, in reality, it's really not much different from putting it in a folder. So there's nothing magical or strange about storing documents in the Brain. And by the way, if for some reason I wanted to take this document and move it out of the Brain, I can simply drag and drop it onto my desktop. And you can see now it's on my desktop and not attached to that thought I've created. And of course I can drag and drop it in. So that's just things for you to be aware of in terms of how easy it is to add files. Now, what I want to also show you is integrating existing information. That is just as easy. Now, more than likely, you're going to be starting your Brain with files that are already in existence. So no problem there. So, for instance, for this website, we actually have a marketing plan that I want to have. So I'm simply going to drag and drop this into the Brain. And what that does is that creates a shortcut to where that file exists. Now, Matt is going to get into file synchronization across multiple platforms, which of course we do. So if you drag and drop a document and you're just leaving it in as a shortcut, that's fine, but just be aware if you're then syncing your Brain across multiple machines and this file is stored locally, you will not then be able to get that copy. So what I recommend you do is right-click and select to either move or copy this file into your Brain. In this case, I want to sunset that folder, so I'm going to move it. And interestingly enough, if I right-click on my background and go into Preferences, in the UI setting, if you are doing a lot of data synchronization, the default, because the Brain is, of course, a wonderful, unassuming program, we drag and drop, the default is just to create a shortcut to that document. However, a lot of you might want to change that default on drag and drop, and this is why I'm pointing it out, instead of to link files, to move them. If you're just wanting to move things in. And again, you can also just copy things in like I showed you. Just a little tip there and reminder for those of you that are synchronizing files. So you can see now I've got my marketing plan under my new website project. Well, the other thing that's kind of cool is I can copy and paste a bunch of things in my Brain as well. So if I want to control-click on my advertising budget, my customer survey, and then right-click to copy, in this case copying documents, and then coming over here to right-click in the background to paste these files, now I've just added those in my Brain as well. So I just want to let you see how easy it is to also copy documents into the Brain. And in terms of my customer survey for this new website project, I'm going to go out to the web and use the Brain's search web feature to go ahead and do searches on, most effective customer surveys. Now, the reason I want to do this is I want to show you how easy it is to drag and drop URLs into the Brain. Any links can be put in. And this is within the bounds of file management, because a lot of times you will have sources like Salesforce.com, like Microsoft SharePoint, where the data, you don't necessarily have access to the file, but you'll have the path. So go ahead and drag and drop that path into the brain. So for instance, this is a cool article on, 10 essential tactics for creating valuable customer service surveys. So I'm just going to drag that URL and drop this under customer survey. And so that creates a link to Help Scout. And of course I can name this a different name in my brain if I want to change this to customer survey creation. I can go ahead and do that and adjust whatever, or so let's say customer form creation. And I can change that, and I still have that link. And again, you can see in my Thought tab, I've got that relative path. And let me just go ahead and drag and drop another document. Now, one of the things you might notice, I'm presenting on my PC today, and I have the brain in auto hide mode. I know there's been some questions about that. That's where this little icon, I really love auto hide mode. I click on the icon and the brain appears. If I click off my brain, it slides away. But for those of you that are maybe on a Mac, or just to also be clear, I'm going to go back to floating my brain to normal window mode, just so you can see how drag and drop works in that way. And that way the brain stays on screen and you don't have to drag on the icon like you would if you were in auto hide mode. So let me just do another drag and drop that way, just so everyone's clear on how this works. So I'm just going to grab this other piece of information from SurveyMonkey. This might be a good site to develop my survey on. So I'm simply going to drag and drop that, and I've got a link to that site as well. So one of the nice things about storing information, whether it's a document or a file in the brain, is you can start to annotate your content. So here I can say, I really like the structure that SurveyMonkey offers, as well as their customer service. So here, I'm not just storing my information, I can have a note on what that is all about. And that's really nice too. So that way, when maybe I'm going to fill this whole area with links to, vendors, I can mouse over that and I just see that note right away. And that kind of reminds me, oh, okay, well maybe I'll go with these guys. They have a good structure, good customer service. Maybe they're gonna help me get this done. So that's really good as well. And, the same thing also applies for versioning of documents. So when I was actually on some of these earlier, the Time Warner Thought, which I'm just using my thought list, and this e-supply chain, I had 4 versions of a document right here. And then what I can do in the notes area for that is I love using the notes area to annotate. Version 4 is not finalized, use version 3 for clients. Here's what we changed in the previous version. So you can have a nice annotation of the content that you're looking or sharing at by utilizing the notes and these tabs below. And likewise, I'll just jump back to customer survey, and I will talk to you a little bit about versioning now. So let's say I've created my first version of customer survey. You might be wondering, how do I store multiple versions of a document in the brain? Well, it's pretty simple. So I'm just going to launch this document. And, this is version 1, and I'll just say customer survey ... change the font here and make it version 2. So here we go. Here is version 2 of my customer survey. So now what I'm going to do is simply go to File. Remember, this is stored internally in the brain. Hit Save As. I can go ahead and save this in my brain. This is where it's stored. I don't want to change that. Keep it in my brain, but I'm just going to change the name of this file to version 2. So I'm going to hit Save now. And now I'm going to close that. You'll see the little number 2 by that thought, and I've got 2 versions of that document. And of course, I could do the same thing, just to make sure everyone's clear. I can open one of 2 of them, or I can open version 2, for instance, and maybe make another change. Let's go ahead and change this red, and go back to File, Save As, saving it in its current place. But I'm going to change that to version 3. So I can save as back into that folder in the brain, save that. And what you can see now is I've got 3 versions, and you'll see the content, the icon has a little number 3, and you can have the 3 versions there as well. And what's great about that is, let me, of course, go ahead and spell check survey and add a capital S here. But one of the things that's nice is now I can go ahead and make connections. So this customer service survey is also something that I want to get marketing's help on. So I'm going to make a connection to marketing so that marketing can get involved in this, because that's sort of their domain. And in specifically Sarah, who is a great marketing analyst, is going to work with me on that. So now I've got a connection to Sarah. I've also have it under marketing, and it's under the website project that it belongs. So that's the way it works for adding files. Now, folders are just as interesting. So what I'm going to do now is, let me just go to My Projects here, and I'm simply going to drag and drop. There's going to be some engineering involved in this website, so I'm going to drag and drop this engineering project into my brain. And what this does is that actually goes ahead and creates a shortcut to that file. And, you know, shortcuts are fabulous because, you know, sometimes, especially if you have those gargantuan file folder directories, you can create a shortcut just to, you know, something that would be maybe buried. You can just go ahead and get that in. So that's one way to add a file. And I'm just going to go ahead and delete that or forget that. The other thing I can do is I can actually import a folder. So let me find, I was actually going to look for a different folder here. Now let's just go ahead and do that same engineering folder. So I'm going to go to File and select Import. And in this case, I'm going to select to import a folder. And what that's going to do is it's actually going to take the contents of that folder and import them into my brain. So I'm going to go to my projects and select engineering and hit save. And yes, I want to proceed. And now what you'll see is, and I want to just go to that engineering folder so you can see what's in it and compare what this looks like. So now what I've got is this engineering folder, and it had 3 subfolders. Well, here are the 3 folders in TheBrain, and then under that, all the content as well. So if there's only one level of content, like my IT management folder here in my outside my brain had 3 documents, what it does in an import is it attaches all 3 of those documents to the thought. If for some reason I want separate thoughts for those, no problem. I can just drag up from the thought menu there, and you can see now I'm just making them separate. And so that IT management sort of just becomes a main category there, and I've got the 3 documents separate. And then, of course, if it's got, like, under website content, there's a whole bunch of other folders in here. So it's gone ahead and added thoughts for each of these folders. Now, an import is sort of a one-time thing. So once you import a folder, it's in there. It doesn't stay up to date. But there is another scenario, which it's good and bad. It's not great if you're syncing, but if you're dealing with a lot of network drive folders where people are constantly updating the drive and you have no control over it, you can also create what we call a virtual thought where you're sort of mirroring your folder structure. So I want to show you how to do that. So what you have to do to create virtual thoughts is you're going to go into the UI, back into that UI area. So Preferences UI, there are a few different things for you all. When working with files, remember I showed you this whole thing about changing your defaults for linking or to moving files. Now the other thing I want to show you here under UI is to how to turn on virtual thoughts for folders. So virtual thoughts are it's going to be very different when you drag and drop a folder. Rather than just a shortcut to that folder, it parses the folder structure out, but it doesn't move it into the brain. So that's where you kind of have to decide, what you want to do with this information, and the brain, there's many ways to do it. So I'm going to check Show Virtual Thoughts for Folders. And now I'm going to come out here and drag and drop this engineering so you can see it's going to be a redundant, but I actually want to be redundant in this case because I want to show you the difference here. And drag and drop engineering, it's letting me know that it's already there, which is fabulous. But I'm just going to put it anyway so you can see. So here, you can see that it's gone through and it's actually parsed all the folders, so my website content and these folders. But what's unique about this type of virtual thought, and the reason the folder is purple, is because the brain's telling you these folders are really stored outside of the brain, and we can't really do anything. They don't have any native properties. You can't thought type them and so forth. You can link them to other things. But why this might be cool for some of you is if you actually want to create stuff outside your brain and have it dynamically updated, that'll work. So what I mean by that is, let me go into engineering and let's go into website content. So you can see we've got the 5 folders here, but I'm going to create a new folder called Radical Website Ideas. So just created that folder outside of my brain, Radical Website Ideas. I've just clicked on my brain, and you can see that that folder has updated dynamically in my brain. So that's kind of cool too. And that, what's cool about that is it's not just buried in a directory. If Radical Website Ideas is something that, like, I really need to discuss with IT, so I want to put it, under IT management, I can do that. And now that folder becomes contextualized and linked and accessed. So that's virtual thoughts. Virtual thoughts, though, again, because you don't have all the properties of a native thought, I wouldn't recommend them unless stuff is constantly being produced. They're good if you have a shared company drive. Create virtual thoughts to that. Otherwise, I'd recommend just shortcut to a folder or an import, especially if you're syncing. And so those are the basic content sources. What I'm going to do now is pass presenter over to Matt, and Matt's going to talk a little bit more about additional cloud sources like Google Docs and Dropbox and OneNote and all these other types of information that can also be visualized for file management in your brain.
Great. Thank you so much, Shelley. And yeah, there are so many different types of information sources out there, as we've discussed. And Shelley's shown you great ways of bringing in links to web pages and documents, whether it's a shortcut or just visualizing existing folders. But in this day and age of digital information, there are now so many different types of digital information, and we're all noticing this in relationships with other people within our own organization, clients, friends, relatives. So often throughout in just one business day, a client that says, great, I've got this file ready for you. I'm going to send it to you. I'll send you a link to the file in my Dropbox. Another department at the same organization says, we've got our files ready too. Those will be delivered to you in Gmail or Outlook. And other people in my own organization sending me, links to information through Twitter or their Facebook page and so forth. So with all these different information sources that we're gathering, no two people store information the same way, and the brain is a wonderful bridge to keep track of and manage all of that digital information in one location, whether it's coming from Dropbox, Google Drive, or OneNote. And so let's go ahead and work through these. You'll notice there's a lot of different similarities between these different items. I'm going to start with some of the most common. Let's just start with Gmail. I'm going to open up here I've got my Gmail open, and let's say I've got a new project that I'm working on. I also open Time Warner, and let's say we've got creating a new thought for a new ad campaign, One World for All. So this is the name of my new ad campaign, One World for All. I'm going to actually assign a thought to this particular thought, and the thought type will allow me, we can talk a little bit more about thought types just a bit, but here I'll call this an ad campaign. And the thought type allows me to get that visual identification. I can see Time Warner right away without actually opening files and documents. I can see we have 2 active ad campaigns going with this particular client. And the brain is identifying that with this visual cue of the graphic, and when I mouse over, it tells me that's an ad campaign. It's a great visual advantage, but it also helps in doing search and reports as well to add these thought types to your thoughts. So here's my thought for my one world for all. All my digital information that is associated with this ad campaign is going to be linked to this one particular thought. So first, I've got a couple of high-level categories: my art assets, my area for meeting notes, and project presentations. And another area for my project resources. So I created a couple of sort of high-level subcategories. For my art assets, we're going to be having a media blitz. Obviously, we're not going to be sending an REI Gmail or gear mail out, but I like their format. Here, if I open up one of these emails from REI, they've got really big, bold graphics, a lot of information, links to their website. I want to share this with my design team. Can we emulate this type of message for our client? And I don't want to have to dig through years and years of Gmails to find this when I'm sharing it with my design team. So I'm linking this email right into my brain. From the address bar, I simply click and drag right into the brain. And it doesn't link just specifically to Gmail. It links to that specific message. So I'm actually going to change the name of this so that it's not called just Gmail, but REI example. And I even give it a label: create graphics. I may have dozens of different emails here that I'm sharing with my design team. One has nice colors. One has a nice message or script. Another one has a great way of sharing links. So when I mouse over, I'll see, obviously, this is my REI example email blast, and they've got great graphics. And I'll be reminded of that to share with my design team in an upcoming meeting. Let's go right into Outlook as well. And Outlook specifically has it here. I actually found this same message. So I want you to see what it looks like coming in from Outlook. Outlook has, we have a unique integration with Outlook. I just simply drag and drop that Outlook message. So REI Gear Mail, I did a drag and drop. Notice that Outlook actually discovers the subject of the email and gives the thought that it just created the subject of the email: color, comfort, and warmth. So again, I can just change this example or this title for this thought. Great email layout. I don't even need to know that it's from REI. That's not the point. I just want to share the big, bold graphics with my design team. And let's look specifically at the notes section. What the brain did, let me just scroll down just a little bit. What the brain did was it actually brought in an HTML rendering of this message. Now, it's actually very spread out and large, so it kind of fills the screen here. But in my meeting, I won't even need to open my Outlook and find the message or click on the link to launch Outlook. Outlook actually takes like a minute to load on my machine. I'll save that time and just say, hey, look at these graphics, and I can just take them down to the notes section. These are some of the graphics that came from this message. Can we do the same thing with our client with their products? So that is a unique setting when linking Outlook items into your brain. Just simply drag and drop that email. You can also drag and drop contacts in or events in your calendar. Drag and drop those right into the brain, and again, you'll get that HTML rendering down in the notes section. And that's the only application that gives you that automated population of the notes section when you bring an actual document in. Now, I just did a drag and drop, and I get this question quite a bit. What if you want to archive that message? I'm going to go through and clean my Outlook or my email up at some point. I've got too many messages in there. I'm going to wipe it out or what have you. But I'm still going to need to show this to my design team. You can actually hold down the Control key. So I'm going back to Outlook. I'm going to grab another message here. And I'm just going to hold down the Control key on my PC, Control, drag and drop. And you'll notice the difference is very subtle. Look at where I just did a straight drag and drop. I've got a link, this little Outlook symbol there tells me that that's a link to an Outlook message. When I hold down the control key, I get this little envelope. I still get the HTML rendering, so I can open this particular email and see it with its graphics and its text and format and everything. But that's been archived. It's an MSG file that's stored internally inside my brain. I can delete this Linden Sculpture Garden message, and I'll still have access to it from the brain. I can launch that attachment. But let's sort of switch gears and go into all the Dropbox and Google Drive. But once again, as Shelley mentioned, it's still just simply a hierarchical structure. It's a folder with different files. Is still the same. It's great that you have access to it online, these documents online. But I have access to all those different online sources here right from. So I've gone over to Project Resources, and I'm going to start. Let's actually start locally. So I'm going to open up Dropbox, for example. Now, when you're running Dropbox, you've got your online location for where all your Dropbox items are, and that is simply emulating or reflecting what is in your local Dropbox directory. So anything I put into this local location will appear for me online on in my Dropbox account. So right from the desktop, I can still drag and drop to create a shortcut. So materials research, great. I want a copy of that. In my brain, I drag and drop. That just gives me a shortcut back to this particular item. But if I want that online Dropbox link, right here from my local directory, I can right-click, and I can select Share Dropbox Link. It's actually copied the URL for the online version of Materials Research, and I go into the brain, I right-click, and I paste web link, and there it is. I get the little Dropbox logo, and it tells me Materials Research, and I can click on that. Now, I'm already logged in to Dropbox. You can see I've got it open over here. So it's going to take me directly to this Materials Research document as soon as it loads up. If I wasn't logged in yet, and that wasn't a publicly shared file, I would be asked for my password. So just because you move it into the brain doesn't mean the whole world suddenly has access to that link you've connected to if you share your brain. It's linking to the actual file that is protected, or maybe not, maybe it's shared, but if it's protected in your Dropbox, password protected, because it's private, then it'll be password protected when you try launching it from the brain as well. But here again, we can open up, I've got this Getting Started PDF. I don't actually need to open it. I can grab the link from here if I want, or just back from my directory. You see that everything in Dropbox, when I mouse over it, I get that little share button over on the right. That's just a quick location to go to get the URL for that particular file. I can copy it, and right back in the brain when I right-click, paste web link. So it's really, really easy to get those Dropbox items into your brain and accessible from within your brain. People email me Dropbox links quite often. It's becoming more and more popular, and this is the very first thing I do. I know if that's a file that I'm going to need access to quite often, I'm just going to copy the link and paste it in the appropriate location in my brain, underneath a client or underneath a couple of clients, because we can have it linked to multiple locations if needed. Let's take a look at Google Drive. Google Drive really mirrors the same process. So once again, with Google Drive, I've got the online location of where all of my items are, as well as the actual online directory. So here's my online directory, and I've got a file in here, this pricing chart. Once again, I can simply right-click and select to get the link. So there's the link for that online Google Drive item, and right back in the brain, I right-click and I paste the web link. So, and here again, it's sort of similar to, let me go back to Google Docs, sort of similar to what was happening with the Google emails. You notice when I dragged and dropped an email in, it just said Gmail. It didn't bother giving me the actual name of the subject. So we don't gather that information, or Gmail doesn't give us that information. The same with Google Docs. It just says that this is a Google Doc. I actually need to rename this. So I linked this to the file that was my pricing chart, and I could just rename that. So there's my link to my pricing chart. Now, a few more information sources. One that I've noticed in particular, people are calling in quite a bit, and there's sort of a resurgence in people using OneNote. And we've got some great OneNote integration as well, simply because everything in OneNote has a URL associated with it. So I'm going to open up OneNote, and I'll just show you really quickly, and you'll get the idea. Whether I'm right-clicking on a paragraph within a document, I get an option that says Copy Link to Paragraph. I can go up to the tab and right-click. I get Copy Link to Selection or Section. Or even on the notebook itself, I right-click over on the left in my control panel there. I right-click and I copy the link to the whole notebook. So each little item within Notebook has its own unique URL, so therefore the brain is going to have no problem linking to this information at all. I can right-click and select Copy Link, and once again, right back in the brain, I right-click and I paste that web link right in. So there's my link to the teaching workbook. And launching that is going to launch the appropriate application, and there it is, opening it for me in front of the brain. And then finally, one more information source is Evernote. And once again, Evernote runs through sort of the same structure that we've seen so many other times. Everything within Evernote also has that URL. So I can right-click and I can select, in this case, they call it the Copy the Note link. So I copy the note link, and back in the brain, right-click, and I paste the note link. And this is actually telling me that one's already there, so let's grab a new one. I've already linked to that. So here's a video conference highlights. I right-click and copy that note link, and back in the brain, right-click and paste. And there it is. So it actually renames it Welcome Back, but I can actually rename that once again to my video highlights. So really easy to get all of this information accessible from the brain, having it archived within the brain. This question came up, and I just want to point this out to someone that, you know, sometimes we actually don't need all of that information, or we're worried that that information is going to change in the future. If that's the case, and you know, someone is sending me a link to their data or their information, you know, I don't know that they're going to keep this document here, this particular pricing chart. In this case, this is mine. But if someone shares this and gives me a copy, you know, I don't know for sure that this is always going to be here. They may say, "Well, this is an old pricing chart. I don't need it anymore," or they move it to a different location. Therefore, the URL changes, and they don't notify me. Another option for you, and this is very important to point out, is we don't need to link to the document or to the entire web page. Maybe I just need, you know, this first paragraph, or you know, just a fraction of the data that I can copy and actually paste right into the notes. So there you can see I've just taken the text. It retains the formatting for me as well, and I can just paste that content right there into the notes. And now I don't need to worry about whether that document is always going to be there or if it's safe or protected. I've archived just that piece of information. Maybe it's a password or a phone number, but just that information that I'm after, I've pasted right there into my notes. I know I am always going to have that information here in my brain. So I've saved all the information I need access to from. Here we're looking at 5 different information sources, all within one area of the brain. I don't need to worry about launching and finding the email and the password and the links that I've received over the past couple of weeks on this project. I've linked everything into my brain, so it's automatically going to be at my fingertips. And Shelley, with that, I think I'll hand it. Sure, we've got some about Evernote, and yes, we covered Evernote, but also maybe some sharing and collaboration questions that might be coming in. But I'll hand it back. All right,
great. Sorry, I was just on mute. Hopefully, can you hear me now, Matt?
Yes, I can.
Okay, very good. Yeah, lots of great stuff coming into the Q&A. Let me get right into the last question here, and we'll go move up to some of the earlier ones as well. Jacob is writing, can we set keyboard shortcuts for formatting in note section tags, tabs of the brain, similar to keyboard shortcuts to OneNote. For example, I like to use Control+ to make a bulleted list.
Mm-hmm. Yes, there are a number of keyboard shortcuts right here within the brain. You'll notice that you'll see some of them, like let's just go down to the notes here. To save a note, Control+S auto saves a note as you're typing. I go under Edit, obviously Control+Z, Control+Y, Control+V, Control+A, all the common ones are there. If you'd like to modify these, or you see something here that does not have a keyboard shortcut, not to worry, you can create your own within the brain, and not just for notes either. Keyboard shortcuts to create new child thoughts, to add attachments, to run reports, and so forth. It's all there if you click on Help, go into Options and down to Preferences. Now, if you're on a Mac, you would click on TheBrain and go to Preferences on a Mac. Here on a PC, Options, then Preferences, and right over at the end, the very last tab, are our accelerators. And you can see I could spend a whole hour going through each one of these and what they do and what they are. It's pretty straightforward, but it lets you know all of the different features within the brain that can potentially have keyboard shortcuts. I'm running right now the defaults. I've got a few minor customizations, but these are the defaults. So for most of them, we leave them blank, and it's really up to you if you want a keyboard shortcut for that action item, to create a pin, to unlink a thought, or remove a pin, and so forth. It's up to you to actually insert those on your own. But you can see it's quite a list, and you can save those lists and import them into other brains or share them with other brain users, so you can export and import the keyboard shortcut lists from different brains.
All right, great. And then another question from Jeffrey. What about JPEGs? And I'm glad you asked that, because the cool thing about adding images is you can add zoomable icons. So maybe you can even show capturing an image and just adding a JPEG or something too, because that is a format we didn't cover. So thanks for that question,
Absolutely.
Jeffrey.
Great. Well, this doesn't have an image on it. Let me find something with an image. I think I've got in my Evernote. Let's say I just want a screen grab of my Evernote layout. For whatever reason, that's going to be important for me for sharing with other users or customers. Right here on this particular thought, I'm going to right-click and select a feature to capture a thought icon. Now, you can do this with whatever you have in the background. You see a particular web page with a great image on it that you want to capture, or you're testing a product and you've got an error screen that you don't want to have to retype out. You just want to send a screenshot of that error message off to your engineers. Right here within the brain, we can select to capture thought icon, and notice that the brain minimizes, and you are left with these red crosshairs on the screen. Anything that you capture by clicking and dragging will become your screenshot. So here I've got a screenshot of me and all of the different projects that I'm working on with Evernote, and now I've attached that as a zoomable icon to my current active thought. So I could just mouse over that and it zooms out. There's that screen grab that I selected. You can do that with images on your different social media sites. If you're capturing images from I can't remember all the different names, but the Facebook, Instagram, and so forth, or anything out there on the web, you just want to get that quick screenshot. The brain has a great way to do that. And if you want a screenshot of the brain itself, once again, I can right-click. I'm going to overwrite this image. I'm going to select Capture Thought Icon, and when the brain minimizes, I just click on Tab. That brings the brain right back, and I can grab a screenshot of my entire brain to be saved in my brain. So it's just asking me if I want to overwrite the existing image. I do. And so now I've got a screenshot of my brain within a thought in my brain. So a lot of different things that you can do with that screenshot. And of course, if you just right click and copy an image or save an image, some of these might be, there we go, right click, and I can just copy this image. See, some websites don't let you do that, and that's why the screenshot is really great. It's not giving me the capture or copy image option in this particular website. So the brain has that screenshot feature, but if you have the image copied onto your clipboard, you can right-click and paste thought icon there as well.
And then, of course, just to drag and drop any image when you drag and drop that image in, you get a zoomable preview of that as well.
Absolutely. Here's a random image that I have, so it's maybe something that I'm going to be using for just a small little icon for a project we're working on, but I want to save this JPEG in my brain. This is really neat. Let's go back to the art assets. Let's say this is going to be the mascot for the project we're working on. I'm just going to click and drag this gray cube right here in as a child thought, and notice that it actually put the gray cube as the icon. So you'll have nice little zoomable icons for any thoughts where a single image is attached.
And it depends on the size of the graphic as well, because those can actually come up quite a bit larger depending on size. I don't know if you want to comment on that, Matt.
They can here. Yeah, I've got a larger one. This is probably larger. It's called wallpaper, so I'm sure it's going to be large. Yes, it is. Very similar to the wallpaper that's actually in my brain. But once again, I'll drag and drop wallpaper, and notice the size that wallpaper goes to. It actually tries to fill the area of the brain. So when I mouse over, it'll go to the largest possible size within the frame, the top frame of your brain. If I make my brain a little bit larger, and I can minimize the tool tabs down below, now when I mouse over, it gets even larger. So it goes to its largest possible scale within the window of the brain.
All right, great. And then we have multiple questions about synchronizing your files across multiple machines, as well as maybe even we can also add to that showing you how to access them even without your machine through our cloud. So basically anything that's stored natively in the brain, you can synchronize, and that can be cross-platform. Maybe you're at the office on your ThinkPad and at home on your Mac. No problem there. So we'll go ahead and spend a couple minutes talking about the synchronization and clouding aspects of your file management.
Absolutely. So I'm going to go ahead and sync this brain. The little sync buttons are located at the top of the brain here. So I'm going to sync this with my cloud account. Say OK. And that'll begin the sync process. You can have a free cloud account, or you can upgrade to the Brain Pro services that has a lot of additional synchronization features, and upgrade even further to what we call Team Brain. And Team Brain actually allows you to collaborate, so multiple people editing and accessing the same brain. So I'm syncing this to the cloud account, and I'm actually going to log in to my cloud account here on the brain. Here I am. And I do have Team Brain services, so the first page I'm going to see are a series of brains that I'm sharing with my team, with members of my team, and I think this might be one of them. No, it's actually not. So I'm going to go into my account page, and here I'm in my eSoul brain. So I don't see that it is synced quite yet. It's been a while since I've synced this brain, but I'm going to go ahead and look at another brain. Here, I'll open up this JT Apparel, and you can see this brain is opening online in my browser. I can still add and create new thoughts, new content, so I can click and drag to create new thoughts, add attachments, and so forth. But I can also save and share this information, because I do have Team Brain, with Shelley or with other colleagues. This is a brain that I collaborate on. So if I go into settings, you'll see that Shelley has editor access to this particular brain as well. So anything that Shelley does will show up in the brain online. And when I sync, and here's my copy of JT Apparel, we'll go ahead and open that locally. Any changes that Shelley makes to the JT Apparel brain when I sync will be reflected here in my local copy. And we've got different ways that we keep track of who's modifying which thoughts. Shelley assigns projects to me that I work on. I can send projects back over to Shelley for review after I've completed a few steps. And we do that with the thought types. So you can see here thought types and thought tags, actually. Shelley has her own thought tag called For Review. And these are the 6 different thoughts that she's currently reviewing. And here are the thoughts that I'm reviewing, that Tracy's reviewing, and so forth. So we assign thoughts to ourselves, and furthermore, run reports. And the reports, if I turn on the modification detail, I can see who has modified which thoughts and when. So Shelley's been really busy with biometrics and sportswear and so forth. If I scroll down a little further, I see Tracy is doing a lot of updating in our Fitness Universe client. So a lot of activity happening, and I can keep track of who's making those changes and when. And I can access this brain locally, or let me go back out to my Team Brain page. I can open this brain online. So there you can see my eSoul brain just updated. So that's available online as well. And
I'm glad you're opening online, because I think, there's a whole collaborative aspect, which is great, synchronizing to other people's machines, but a lot of individual users will just synchronize with all, like, their 3 computers and mobile devices as well. And also, if you forget your machine, you can hop on somebody else's and access your stuff through your online account. So that's very important, whether you're in Team Brain or whether you're just an individual.
That's right.
Happens to have forgotten their laptop at home that day when you're at a client meeting or something in that case.
That's right. So I can not even share this brain with other users and just sync it between my work desktop machine and my iPad at home. It's cross-platform compatible, and I can have access to my brain, my same individual private secure brain in both locations. So a lot of different advantages. I can also give other people just read-only access by letting them know what the URL is. So let's say I do want to keep this as an editor to myself. I don't want to share this brain to have anyone else edit, but if I give them the URL and I change the brain from private to unlisted, I can click on share right here on the online version, is the one I'm on now, and there's a link to this particular thought in this brain, so they can start from this thought and review my entire brain online in read-only mode. It's a great way to give other people read-only access to the brains that you're creating.
All right, great. And I'm just typing an answer to Eric, but I'll just we'll just talk about it out loud and you can demo it. Eric was asking, as sort of part of the whole sharing concept that we're on now, can you transfer a part of a personal brain to another shared brain? So Eric, the answer is no. Yeah. Sharing is per brain. So right. When you give people access, you're giving people access to the full brain. Now, in the future, we're working on end-tiered access control like we have with EKP, so stay tuned for that. But for now, we got to say no. That being said, so what you do, I encounter this all the time. I have my mega Shelley Hayduck brain, but I have some cool thoughts, and I think, I got to put them in our marketing brain. So what you would then do is copy a section of that brain and design a brain that you're just comfortable sharing with your team. So at this point, what we're recommending to users, and Matt can show you how to segment brains. You'll have your personal brain. If there's stuff you want to share, copy and paste it out of your personal brain, put it into your team brain on, marketing or whatever, and then set collaboration on that. And that's actually an interesting, so if you want to spend a little time on showing to copy and paste thoughts between brains, that could be interesting as well.
Absolutely.
And maybe just doing a quick sync to the server with that new brain, because I don't know that we actually covered that.
Sure. So let's say we've got a new member on our marketing team. I don't want to bog them down with all the research and development that we're working on and other projects that don't really concern them, but I want to give them all the information that I have for marketing within our organization. So therefore, a fraction of this brain is really important to them. So what I've done is I control-clicked on marketing, and that added marketing into my selection area that you can see on the brain. Let's minimize the online version for now so that doesn't confuse us. Now I control-clicked because I'm on a PC. On a Mac, you would command-click, and that adds a thought to the selection box. I can continue individually control-clicking on individual thoughts. I can control-click on a gate to add all the thoughts that are connected to that specific gate. But with marketing as the active thought that has been selected in my selection box, I'm going to right-click in my selection box, and I'm going to choose to crawl and modify selection. So now I'm going to expand the thoughts that I'm selecting, child word from marketing, meaning below marketing, and we'll just go 6 generations down. And we'll say OK. And that's going to add a whole series of thoughts. You can see it's populating right now. I've got quite a bit of thoughts over here, some content. I'm going to right-click and copy those. So copy selected thoughts. And now I'm going to create a new brain. So my new brain is going to be called new new marketing team. Now, there's some great things that I'd like to point out here really quickly. For those of you just getting started with the Brain, when you're creating a new Brain, you can actually add a template. So I can populate a Brain from scratch using the theme of education or brainstorming or business, what have you. In this case, I have the content I need. It's copied on my clipboard. So I'm starting with a blank slate. But that's another great feature if you're just getting started to build up sort of a sample Brain on a particular topic. So now I'm starting with a blank slate. I didn't select from one of the Brain templates, but I still have those thoughts copied onto my clipboard. So I can right-click and select to paste. There's a little verification. Oh, yes, I do want to paste those in. I'm pasting in not only the thoughts, but the thought types, the thought tags, the icons and colors, links and data. So you can see there's, even though there were only around 18 thoughts, there were a lot of attachments on those thoughts, links and information and data and so forth. So you can see all that information, my public relations and so forth. Now this has a lighter background, so marketing showed up really light. I'm just going to change the color of that marketing thought to make it dark green so I can see it. There we go. So here's my marketing thought. You can see my thought tags and everything is still there, but this is the information that I want to share with that new user. So now I can sync this Brain to the cloud. And again, once it's completed its sync, I can go online and change that to a publicly listed Brain or an unlisted Brain. But I need to change it away from private, otherwise they would need to know my password in order to access the Brain. But I can simply send them the link to this Brain so they can view my Brain online. My other option is to, if I want to give them a copy of this Brain, I know they're using the Brain as well, I can select File and I can choose to create a Brain zip. So I can create a Brain zip and email that to them. But I think the easiest way would be to go into my accounts, and that's where I'll find there it is, my new marketing team is loading up right now. So I can go into the settings. I'll make this an unlisted Brain, so it's no longer private, and save that. And when I open it up, I can grab that URL, email it to them, and they'll be able to view this Brain and start studying all of its content online. So I right-click, share, and there's the URL that I'm going to send out to my new marketing employee who will have access now to all the information that I've gained over the years on our marketing team will be accessible to them as well.
All right, great. And there is another interesting question, but before we're going to get to a couple more questions. I do want to let you know, for those of you that have to leave on the hour, we are now officially on the hour. You will be emailed a recording of this, and that recording will be posted on the homepage. So if you've missed anything or want to rewatch parts of this webinar, that will be a resource to you. And just a reminder, we also have the Brain 101 class tomorrow. Today was all about file management, all about files, as you can see. So we honed in on that. But for those of you that want to understand how do I start creating a Brain from ground up, a little bit more of just how to create a Brain, join us for that class tomorrow. It's every Friday at 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern Time. It's a great resource. And we're going to continue just for another 5-10 minutes here, just to answer a few more questions. Now, there's one interesting question from Dave. I have multiple people without brains giving me different verbal updates on multiple projects or topics at different times. What is the best way to organize the status or feedback? By person, by topic, with note links back to the people? Best way to use date timestamps in this case? Well, and that's a great question. I personally use the Brain a lot for connecting people to projects. I tend to like to have everything that they're saying as a thought with their stuff under their name and using the timestamp. But that being said, we've done it in different ways. I also have like a sales Brain that I share with Brigitte and Tracy, and we do the opposite. We actually have clients in this Brain, and we'll actually tag the person's name as a thought tag when they're working on that client. So, I know I don't need to call, company A because Brigitte's got her name by that. She's got that covered. So there are some multiple ways of doing this. And Matt, I don't know if you want to maybe show a few of these different ways for Dave or add your thoughts there.
Absolutely. So here I've just gone down into one area of this new test brain, and I've created a thought called team feedback. So let's say we're starting up this new campaign, and just from within the organization, again, just using your scenario, you are the one that's using the brain, but you're receiving emails with feedback from different team members. You can create a single thought, team feedback on the subject of sportswear campaign. My feedback is sponsor some local events. And I had that idea, and I'll timestamp it. Shelley mentioned the timestamp. I'm not sure if you had written in about that as well. Shelley and I both, we love the timestamp, a little calendar-looking button there in the notes section, and it just stamps the date and time that you recorded that piece of information, a discussion, idea you had, an email you received, what have you. And I can go on down. So Shelley had the idea of selling T-shirts. And I'll timestamp that as well. And I can even create a checklist. Let's say I want to do all of these, and I want to keep track of which ones are completed and when. New checklist. We'll say Ben had the idea of host event at a Nike store. So I'll timestamp that, and whoops, timestamp that, and let's say that event took place. We can check it off and add new notes about how successful that was. So a little list of check boxes of different feedback on one particular thought. The next thing we can do, like Shelley mentioned, and I do this quite a bit as well, I'm always connecting people as jump thoughts to different projects and events. And if they have some feedback, I would place it under their name. So here is where I would create a jump thought to Shelley, Matt.
And this is what I do. Like, I have multiple projects. Like, Matt and I are working on website design and a design doc. So I've got Matt's name, even though I've got Matt connected to a few other things. And I like to kind of do it per thought, too. But I guess that's the great thing about the brain, but that also makes it hard and maybe overwhelming. There are so many different ways to organize your information. You really have to kind of experiment and see what kind of gels with your workflow.
Yeah, what works for you, absolutely. Yeah. And in this case, you might also want to, let's say Shelley had some great ideas about the sportswear campaign, but as this brain continues to grow, Shelley's going to be connected to Sportsnet, Sport World, Shoes R Us, etc. So a lot of different projects that's going on within marketing Shelley is going to be related to. And so if under Shelley's thought, I've got all this different feedback and notes, well, which event was she commenting on? She wanted to sponsor a triathlon at a local club and sell T-shirts there to raise awareness for this campaign that we're working on, but was that for Shoes R Us, Sports World, and so forth? You can actually leave notes on links themselves. And that's something that I like to do when the information isn't necessarily uniquely about Shelley. It's not uniquely information about the sportswear campaign, but it's Shelley's ideas on the sportswear campaign or her relationship to sportswear campaign. So right here on the link, notice I've clicked on the link between the two, and it sort of highlights that link. Everything else in the brain is grayed out. And now when I leave a note, that note is being left right there on the link. So great idea to sell T-shirts for charity at local sporting events. I'll timestamp that as well and keep notes on how well that idea is taking off and so forth. And that is because I have the link highlighted. If I go to sportswear campaign, here are my links or my notes for the sportswear campaign, my notes for Shelley. But if I click on the link between the two, then you'll see that that's where the actual link shows up or the note shows up. And sometimes I indicate that that particular link has a note by just putting a little directional arrow on it. So I drop an arrow on it, and that's done over on the link tab. The link tab only shows up when you have a link selected. So if I don't have a link selected, you can see it's the Thought tab for Shelley, but as soon as I click on the link between Shelley and Sportswear, the link is highlighted. I have the Link Tool tab, and I'm going to make it go the opposite way. That's like a toggle switch, off, left, and right. And so there I want to see that Shelley has an idea for Sportswear campaign, and to see that idea, just simply highlight the link. So again, just another option for you to see what works best in the brain that you are creating.
All right, great. And then final question, one from Lars, and it is a good question because it's kind of confusing, all these options. How many people can share Brain? Can they all edit and create new documents if they haven't purchased their own license? So first of all, let's just cover basic sharing, where I'm publishing a Brain in read-only mode, and I'm not giving people access to edit. Now, the cool thing about that is that's free, and we have lots of teachers that do. I just want to start kind of with the lowest level and then work your way up, especially if some of you are on a budget. So you can actually publicly, the easiest way, if your Brain is, let's say, if it's not confidential, go ahead and make that Brain public and then just send the URL, or you can even make it unlisted like YouTube, and I guess Matt can show you these settings. Now, of course, if it's confidential, you can still invite people to that Brain as readers for free, but then they have to log in with their own account. Now, if you want them to contribute to this Brain, to become editors, that's when they would need a Team Brain subscription, and that's $2.99 per user. We do offer volume discounts, and each person then can either edit that Brain online or synchronize to their desktop. So those are kind of the the different scenarios we have. I do recommend Team Brain for those of you for powerful collaboration. It's just a fantastic tool, and it really enables you to save a lot of time and be more productive. And now one other question just coming in from Jim. Is my client required to have the Brain software to open a public Brain zip? Okay, I think we kind of covered that, but again, well, to open a Brain on the web, no, because it's an HTML5, very easy for people to read, but you're using the word Brain zip. Now, if you're actually referring to Brain zip, which is funny because, like, for instance, if you guys want my Brain zip on my project management Brain, I'm happy to send it to you, and I do this for customers, template Brains. We actually have a page, TheBrain.com apps, where you can download Brain zips. Brain zips are different because that's the whole Brain folder structure, file structure, and if you're actually sending a Brain zip, which is all the content and information of that Brain, the answer is yes. They absolutely do need to have the Brain software installed to then open that Brain zip. Now, that being said, it doesn't have to be the paid version. It can be the free version, but if you actually want them to look at that Brain locally as a Brain zip, you have to tell them, hey, before you open this Brain zip, go to TheBrain.com, download the software, install it, and then open it. So that's another way, and I guess that's what a lot of people like too. As great as clouding is, a lot of people love getting the information locally on their desktop so they can, work with it offline on a plane or what have you. And yeah, you can certainly do that, but anything offline in our desktop software will require an installation. As to whether you're using the Brain Pro, which gives you unlimited file management, which is the paid version, or you want to use the Brain Free, that's up to you, but you will need to install the software. And Matt, I don't know if you have anything more to add about those sharing options or...
Yeah, just something that you mentioned earlier with the other question, how many people can open a Brain? If you've got your Brain online, so you sync it to the cloud, and it's marked as either unlisted or public, hundreds, thousands, anyone can go to a particular URL. This is a public Brain that we like to demo from time to time because it really shows the scalability of the Brain. This is Jerry's Brain. And you can go to webbrain.com/explore and explore Jerry's Brain. And this Brain gets a lot of action, a lot of traction, and people click through this Brain on a daily basis because it covers so many just amazing, wonderful things in this particular public Brain that's available to anyone. So that's also a great way to share a Brain. If you want someone to have access to your Brain and to see it without downloading a Brain zip or installing a copy of the software, sync your Brain to the cloud, make sure it's unlisted or public, and share the URL with them.
All right, great. And then in terms of documents and web pages, because Lars kind of had a follow-up, he wants to share, wondering he has a TheBrain, and if he wants to share it with clients and people he outsources, do they need to have the license to TheBrain in order to continue working on the documents? And it's kind of yes and no, because you can give them free read-only access, and if you have a document there, they could grab that document and download it. However, the trick will be, Lars, if you want them to then upload their changes and start making modifications and connections, in that case, yes, that's when we get into TheBrain license territory. And we're happy to, talk to you. You could potentially buy a couple generic licenses and use those for your clients and so forth. Or, we can work with you on different scenarios for licensing. But again, I guess the main thing to remember for the TheBrain is if you need people editing and changing that brain, then they will need some in collaboration and synchronization with you. Then yes, they would need the TheBrain license. Oh, and Andreas has a question about the Brain 9. We just shared some screenshots about the new tabbed interface and some cool new views. We're hoping to get some sort of beta out this year, but don't hold me to it. We have a policy of not actually giving dates out. I do want to let you know anyone on cloud services and part of the Brain service plan will get, free access to that beta, and it'll be a free upgrade. And we are probably going to do a private beta for paid users. I was just discussing this with Harlan yesterday, so we're kind of leaking information out. I'd love to leak more. We have it right here on our desktop. We can't show it to you yet. Have a couple of screenshots we can share with you, and stay tuned, because I'm actually sure within a month or two there's going to be a lot more information on that, and all these want your feedback too. So I just sent out the user voice link to people. You can tweet at us, hop on the discussion boards. We definitely want your feedback. If you have any suggestions for what you want to see or don't want to see in the next version, we are very customer driven, so feel free to talk to us. We have chat on our website, free customer support, whether you're a paid user or free user. All human beings right here in the Brain office are working from the Brain, so there's no automated emails. You'll actually get to talk to a person when you call us. So we'll stay in touch on that. And I think with that we've covered most of the questions and certainly gone into overtime. Matt, any final words of wisdom on file management or anything else discussed today?
Well, I want to thank everyone for joining us today. We had showed some great examples and different possibilities of using the Brain. And again, just extend an invitation to everyone to join a Brain 101 class if anything they saw today was beyond what they've experienced yet with the Brain. You're a first-time user, and you want to take things slow, step by step. Join us for a Brain 101. Always some great tips, and even if you're a long-time user, it's always great to stop in and see what's new. And also just some great resources for us, for you, on our website at thebrain.com. Video tutorials and a lot of sample brains that you can download from our website.
And I mentioned this to a couple of Mac OS users. Like today we're on the PC just because we're on PCs. Basically, pretty much 95% of all the functionality we showed today, other than like the auto hide feature, works the same on the Mac. So really no differences. That being said, we recognize that the Mac OS users love Mac-specific events. So Matt actually has one coming up in 2 weeks, not this week, the following week. It's on our homepage. It's task management on his Mac. He's going to be leading that session. So for those of you that are on the Mac OS, I'll just give our next webinar a plug. Do go ahead and sign up for that. And we hope to see you on future Brain technology events. I guess with that, I'll ask you to maybe close your folders or drag and drop them into your Brain and start digitizing your mind. And good luck with visual file management. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.
Thanks, everyone.